Welcome to the second video of Reflective Android, where I'm going to talk about how to do refactoring in Android Studio with Gemini. I'm going to split this into 3 different videos. And in the first one, I'm going to talk about what is refactoring, what is not, and the guardrails that are necessary to refactor successfully. People usually confuse rewriting with refactoring. On one hand, rewriting usually happens when the code is so messy and unmaintainable that it's safer to change the architecture or start almost from scratch. Rewrites are much more expensive and risky because you are rebuilding how the system works. On the other hand, refactoring means cleaning up the inside of the code without changing what it does, without changing its behavior. It's like reorganizing your kitchen while still being used to cook. You add shelves, remove clutter, and rearrange the tools so everything is easier to find. But the meals, what you end up with, still taste the same. Basically, you refactor when you understand the domain better, when you see a cleaner abstraction or spot duplication, and you update the code to match that understanding. Moreover, refactoring is a continuous activity, not a one-time event. You do it steadily as you learn more and more, so the design stays always aligned with what you know now and stays flexible for future changes. Now you might think, why refactor if AI agents can fix it later? The problem is that agents only see the code they are given, and only a small slice at a time, limited by the context window. And this context window is the limited amount of code and information an AI agent can see and reason over at once. Beyond that, it effectively forgets or never sees the rest. So agents cannot see the whole system. As complexity grows, they miss connections, duplicate logic, and create inconsistencies, just like humans, only faster and at a scale. So the code in the context window of an agent is their input. The better the input, the better the output. And by continuously refactoring that code, the input keeps improving, so the outputs do too. However, refactoring without guardrails can introduce bugs. How do I avoid it? The answer is simple, with tests. But they must focus on behavior, not on implementation. And the problem I see in most code bases is that most tests verify implementation and not behavior, and they usually tend to overuse mocks. In this case, the agents refactor code, and these tests fail even if the behavior is correct. You might think it is fine, we just let the agent fix the test too. But then how do you know the refactor code is actually correct? Because otherwise the agents will rewrite the test to pass the wrong behavior. On the other hand, if tests are verifying behavior already before we start the refactoring, I just need the agent to modify the implementation till all the existing tests, which should not be modified, are green. That's why before refactoring, you need to make sure that you have the right unit test in place, where behavior is the unit and not a method or a class. And that is what we'll see in this video.
So let me give you some context about the task, the feature that we're going to refactor. And that's again in composable preview scanner. And what is this about? Well, if you have ever used previews, you probably know that you can pass parameters to the previews by annotating them with this preview parameter and using this preview parameter provider. So in this case, this composable is a text, and I want to provide different strings that I want to display. And I do it like this. In this case, it's Jens and Jim, and this is what the previews look like. However, the problem is that the name of those previews are the indexes. So since in Kotlin indexes start by 0, for the first value that is Jens, the name is going to be 0, and for Jim it's going to be 1. With the newest version that we have seen here, your tuning preview, the newest version, at this time at least, they have provided a new method that is called getDisplayName. And with this, we can control the name of the previews. So if I do something like this, values element at the index, then the names of the previews correspond to the value that is displayed on the text. And that's this feature about. So I've implemented this by doing TDD. So first of all, I wrote the test, then the simplest implementation that make those tests passed. And we can see here in the CI that already all those tests passed. All the tasks that I have here, most of them are tests except this metalava check that is for the to check for API changes. And what we're going to do next is we're going to refactor, which is the last step in TDD. And in order to refactor with confidence, we need to have, first of all, the right tests in place. And those are tests focused on behavior, not on implementation details. Focus on behavior from the user perspective. And in this case, this is a library, so my users are developers. So I should write tests that focus on how these developers are going to use this library or the APIs of this library to achieve what they want. Because if your tests are focused on implementation details, which usually are tests that contain a lot of mocks, if you are refactoring the implementation without changing the behavior, and one of those tests fails, how do you know that the test is failing because of this coupling to the implementation and not also because something got broken, because it's not behaving as expected? So before we take a look at the test, let us take a look at the component that we had to modify to implement this feature. This is here in this README. So we can see in this section, the screenshot file names, this component that accepts a preview as parameter. And it will generate a unique screenshot file name based on the values of the preview, like group, name, width, height, API level, and all those parameters that are available. And in this case, we also include this getDisplayName that you can get when you are using this annotation that we have seen previously, when you want to have parameterized previews, so to speak. In its most basic form, you just need this line here and then call build, but it also provides different methods to customize the name for your needs. So let's come back to the test and see what we have done here. So here we have some of those tests that I've written previously for this feature. This feature is provided by all the screenshot ID builders, the Android, the common, and the glance one, which I'm passing as a parameter in a parameterized test. And here we have the test. So for instance, we have here, that given a preview with only preview index, then show only index. And here I have also a method that I created only for tests to provide only the relevant information for this test, no noise. And here I have the next one, in which I pass the index and also display name, and the display name also prevails when both are available. And in this case with the underscore, because we don't show, we don't create screenshot IDs with spaces. And then the last one, that is when both are available and this option is enabled. Is an option that also added in case that somebody wants to override this behavior, and instead of displaying the name wants to display the index, so it will show the index instead. But this is all from the perspective of the user of the APIs. Those are valuable tests. With these tests we can refactor with confidence, and this is very important. This is a critical point to automate refactoring with agents, and also without agents, to be honest.
If there is something I want you to take from this video, is that refactoring is a continuous activity. It is something that we do to allow humans as well as agents to produce better code in the future. And also that in order to do refactoring successfully, we need to have the right test in place. Tests focus on behavior from the user's perspective. That is what Martin Fowler defines as sociable unit tests, where a unit is not a class or a method, but rather a group of classes and methods that together define a behavior. Thank you for watching. I encourage you to subscribe so you don't miss out the next video where we are going to plan the refactoring. See you there.